Phoenix Suns came in to Chicago with their foot on the gas. They did not let it up. Devin Booker leading the way. Another incredible win. We'll break all of it down as we make our way through trade deadline week here on Locked On Suns.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We are back. This is Locked On Phoenix Suns. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, and I'm your host, Brendon Kleen, a contributor at Suns.com, as well as Dime Magazine, and a credentialed media member covering the Suns for the past 5 seasons. Thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen each and every morning, for finding us on YouTube, where we are less than 100 subscribers away from 1,000 and this Kelly Oubre bobblehead giveaway. We have a lot to get to today, though, folks. So thank you to everybody listening at home on your favorite podcast platform as well. Today's show brought to you by Bet Online. Bet Online has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. Bet Online, where the game starts. 127-124 was the final score tonight. Bulls made things interesting down the stretch. We had a massive game from Devin Booker, but really that final score is not going to be truthful. It's another one of those games where the Suns, I don't want to say played with their food, but things should not have gotten as interesting as they did. Monty probably sweating this one late when he puts all of his basically not even backups, but the end of the bench into the game, and Malcolm Hill somehow scores 5 points in the last few seconds of the game and cuts it to 3. But again, it was Devin Booker leading the way, and this game was a double-digit lead by the Suns for most of it, and that's where we have to start. We have to talk about Devin Booker tonight. There's a lot of nights where we have to talk about Mr. Booker, but tonight, 38 points, 14 of 23 from the field, and what I always love to do with that especially is divide it up even more by the twos, because man, when he is feeling it, you really can tell by the fact that those mid-rangers, the floaters, the teardrops, the little touches off the glass, all of it is really working, and you can tell. 9 of 13 from 2-point range tonight, just out of this world, and 5 assists to just 1 turnover. So about as good as you can possibly play on offense in an NBA game, in a competitive, close NBA game. Pretty remarkable. And again, had it going in all sorts of ways, because I'm going to pump up and praise the 2-point stuff, because that's part of what I just love about watching him. But he was 5 of 10 from 3 and was doing it all over the court. He was able to get his in isolation. He was able to get his off of screens and, off the ball, moving around and running sets like he's become so great at. He got it in transition and deep catch and shoot threes. Like it was all working for him. And the bigger picture, not even the bigger picture, the bigger point that I wanted to make about Booker that this game was really making me think of is because I was sitting watching and I had the thought, okay, the Bulls don't have anybody to guard Book. They didn't have anybody going into the game. You could look at their lineup and yeah, they have injuries. Maybe Alex Caruso makes a difference. Maybe Lonzo Ball makes a difference. So it's not to say Chicago is bereft of perimeter defense. They just right now don't have those guys. But Ayo Dosunmu was not going to be the one to do it. Javonte Green was not going to be the one to do it. And so, you come into this game as a person who cares about the Suns, but also I'm sure the Suns felt this way themselves as a team pregame, is a certain level of confidence. Hey, this team cannot stop our best player. Like that's a heck of an advantage to have heading into a matchup, and a pretty big matchup. But as I was watching the game go on and I'm seeing all those different ways that Booker is able to find points, he also had a fast break alley-oop finish from Mikal Bridges. Like obscene, just crazy stuff that he's able to do because of the level of skill and precision and smarts that he has. And as I was thinking more about how the Bulls didn't have anybody to guard him, I was thinking, I have that feeling and I have that thought so often in the season. I mean, countless times this year already, I have gone into a game thinking, "Wow, this opponent doesn't have anybody to guard Book," and more often than not, I've been correct. It's borne out, but the reality is, there's probably, I mean, there's far fewer teams at this point that can that do have somebody to sick on Devin Booker than teams that don't, right? I mean, again, the Bulls, it's not exactly an insult to say that they don't have anybody to do that job, because most teams do not. You can tell by the opponents that the Suns have matched up with lately, including the Hawks or the Nets or the Jazz, teams that are very good, solid playoff teams who are going to have a grand total of 0 defenders who can do anything about him. And so what I actually want to kind of do here, just as a little bit of a fun experiment or conversation starter, is to go through the teams that I actually think you could say do have a Devin Booker stopper. And I'm looking at his game log on Basketball Reference just to try to find some moments in the season where he's had somewhat of a poor performance. And the best that I can come up with are the Warriors. And it's not even one player so much as it is their scheme and their versatility. They don't have one guy like Andre Iguodala that they may have had in the past who's really going to do that. I mean, maybe you could say Gary Payton Jr. I don't quite think he's proven himself to be that way, but Book has had a couple of quiet nights against Golden State, so they have to be on the list. Then you have Lou Dort, no questions. I fully believe Lou Dort has to be there, and the Thunder, therefore. Then you have the Memphis Grizzlies and Dillon Brooks, a player who Book has always struggled with, but who hasn't played in, I believe, the past 2 matchups between the Grizzlies and the Suns, but he did play back on November 12th, if I'm remembering correctly, in a game where Book had only 17 points and 3 turnovers. So that has been a nasty matchup for him, dating back quite a long time at this point. And then the only other ones that I could really come up with were the Raptors. Again, not so much one player, but again, that versatility. Scotty Barnes, OG Anunoby, Pascal Siakam. The list goes on of different guys that they can throw at you on the perimeter defensively. And then, of course, to complete this list, you have to have Jrue Holiday in there. And so Holiday, of course, is on that list as well, based on what we saw in the finals. We'll see. They play again this Thursday, but the fact that the list is so short, the fact that we all kind of know who they are offhand, like we've all been watching long enough to know the types of guys and the specific players that give Book trouble, and there are so few of them. And most importantly, the fact that so few of them are actually in the Suns' path between where they are and winning a championship. I mean, yes, maybe you could imagine a playoff schedule where the Suns have to go through the Grizzlies and the Warriors. And so, yeah, that would be kind of a tough one when it comes to Book. And maybe it would be the Bucks in the finals, but you're looking at a handful of people that can stop this guy when he has it right. None of them play for the Chicago Bulls, and he went ahead and answered accordingly. 38 points in 38 minutes. Another incredible prove-it game for him in his 3rd straight All-Star season. I mean, there's only so much to really heap onto a guy, but I guess the biggest compliment you can pay him on a night like this is that it was not a surprise. Talk more about this game. Talk a little bit about the center matchup, which got a lot of attention, and the Elfrid Payton minutes, which are not actually looking too terrible. First, though, guys, people think unusual circumstances mean complicated taxes, but for TurboTax Live experts, that's what makes things interesting. We all have unique lives, whether you've invested in crypto for the first time this year, you own an up-and-coming business, or you're just raising rambunctious little ones. TurboTax Live has experts who can answer your tax questions, walk you through the process, or even do your taxes for you from start to finish. They help you get every deduction you deserve, no matter your unique situation. And you can talk to a TurboTax Live expert through your phone or computer without even leaving the house. TurboTax Live experts are here to help however you need. And if you need an extra hand your taxes off to them completely, and they'll do it for you. To TurboTax Live experts, an interesting life can mean an even greater refund. So visit TurboTax.com to learn more. You do your thing. They've got your taxes. Intuit TurboTax Live. Couple of other positives to get to in this game. The way in which Mikal Bridges is so often solely responsible for turning defense into offense, I think is worthy of a little bit of attention here. There was a stretch right away in the beginning of this game where Bridges was able to lock down Zach LaVine, force him into a fadeaway mid-range jumper, get off the ball. I mean, the rebound did not go to him. DeAndre Ayton, whatever. It got into the hands of the point guard. Bridges runs the floor, camps out in the corner to space the floor, gets the ball, and just swiftly, smoothly gets that thing up for a three. Kind of ended up being off the bounce a little bit because he caught it in an awkward position. I think he had to kind of take a dribble to gather himself, and then just nails that three. We talk about how the Suns are at their best when they are able to turn defense into offense as a team, but what I don't think gets enough attention is the way that Bridges is able to do it himself. Just completely squelching out an offensive possession and then doing his job on the other end to finish off the Suns' possession. Whether that is spacing the floor and being there as an outlet to make a three, or he's also one of the best transition slashers in the entire NBA as well. So, sorry for the YouTube audience. I'm trying to get the camera to stop acting completely frustrating, which has been a little bit of a consistency lately. The other positive I want to get to, actually, though, is, again, that center rotation. Again, something Eddie Johnson remarked upon in the broadcast that I think we're taking for granted already, which might feel kind of crazy to say, but I actually think it's true. The Suns went from having 0 centers, then they had 3. You could say they have 4 with Jalen Smith, and somehow, despite all of that, I'm not sure have proven that they have the guys that they need. I'm not saying that this game taught us anything, but in that capacity, but it added to the question. It added to the bank of information that this coaching staff's going to have to draw from, that we as fans and followers of this team are going to have to draw from. And the reason I say all that is Nikola Vucevic really struggled in some strange ways where he was, he airballed a jumper at one point. He didn't really feel like he made that big of an impact on the game. I mean, he was active on the glass as he always is, but other than that, didn't do a whole lot to really affect the game. But I do think that you saw a little bit of how a big physical center like that can be a little bit of a handful for JaVale McGee specifically. So it got me thinking a little bit more with McGee doing most of his damage, I would say, against Tony Bradley. For the most part, it felt like the biggest athletic moments that McGee had in his 16-8 and 3 night were against Bradley. But then again, Tony Bradley, because he was in the end of the game, he has a plus 17. But that feels pretty reasonable to me. And the moments where you could see Vucevic kind of bodying up on JaVale and things like that, I know I'm zooming in on something small, but if the Suns are going to face a Jokic in the playoffs, if they're going to face, a Joel Embiid in the finals for, somehow, if they even face Anthony Davis again, a healthy Anthony Davis, does JaVale actually add a new element to their center rotation from a defensive perspective that actually helps, aside from just giving you 6 more fouls. And I don't think it's going to be a question that we will get answered until that point, because I don't think that's a chip that the Suns are going to want to play. Are they going to put, JaVale McGee on Giannis, or are they going to rearrange their entire defensive game plan for Anthony Davis in a Lakers game? No, they're not, because they have the 1 seed, and they don't really need to prove anything like that. And they're so good executing what they want to do night to night in the regular season that any big adjustment like that isn't going to be worthwhile, no matter who the opponent is, or no matter what wrinkle they're trying to develop or help flesh out. So Vucevic is a unique matchup. There are other guys like him. I don't feel like we got our answer tonight, which I guess is the point. I wish we could have. I wish we really could have seen a good old-fashioned duel between, JaVale and Vooch. Or maybe I think part of the reason this came up is Ayton was in foul trouble, and so those two guys did have to play mano a mano a little bit. And the Bulls didn't really go to it. The Suns didn't really go to it. Yes, the Bulls were exposed in pick and roll coverage because Vooch is not a great defender. So again, not a perfect comparison to maybe an Embiid or a Davis or, somebody like that. But something I've just been wondering a ton. McGee has been massive for this team. He was massive again tonight. There are many games, more than a handful of games this season where they probably just do not win if not for what JaVale provides. But I still come back to, wait, are we seeing a team better equipped to handle those types of moments in the playoffs against the best big men in the NBA? Or is this just helpful regular season depth? And I don't know. I do not know. Closing out the show, talking about the bench, as I love to do. We'll get to all of that, guys, in just a second. First, though, another quick word from BetOnline. BetOnline.net has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before as football continues its final days right on through the big game. BetOnline.net remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season as the exclusive sports betting partner of the Locked On Podcast Network. And it's not just football. BetOnline has up-to-the-minute info on pro and college hoops, the NHL, boxing, UFC, and live real-time updates of every current game. So don't wait to take advantage of all the new, amazing offers available throughout 2022 at betonline.net. BetOnline, where the game starts. Not often you will hear this portion of the show end with positive thoughts about Elfrid Payton, but I actually think that talking about Payton tonight is relatively worth doing. One, because I don't know how many good nights that will be praiseworthy that we will see, and also because I actually think there's some things to be gleaned about the team more broadly as kind of through the lens of Elf. So 8 points, 4 assists, 4 rebounds. It's not like he went off for 30, but he played his role. And even doing that is pretty solid for this guy who has sometimes struggled to fit in here. The Suns had only 7 points off of Chicago turnovers, only 9 fast break points in general. So it feels like he's a player who excels when the pace is higher, because I think especially he is a guy who excels when there's not rim protection at the basket, because he doesn't really usually have that floater game. Even though he takes a lot of those shots, he's not very effective there. He doesn't have much of a jumper. So if he can't get to really that drive and kick game, it's not going to go well for him. So, maybe it's because Chicago's rim protection is just not that good, even when they do have a big man and when the pace is slow in the half court. But that tends to be the best recipe for him. And in this game, I think he showed some of that. But I think what he really showed that makes it impressive and worth talking about tonight is he's playing 0.5. He tonight was the first night I really came away feeling like he is able to be a positive part of running the Suns offense, not just keeping the ball moving or not, falling apart and surviving his minutes out there. But I actually was watching him thinking, wow, like he's doing what he needs to do. Now, is the shoot component of the 0.5 going to be something that he chips in on? Probably not. But as long as he can, that kind of 2 dribbles and a good decision mindset on attacking a closeout or attacking a rotating defense, then he's going to be fine. And he is not a terrible passer. Like he can make reads and find guys. So there were a lot of moments tonight where he didn't necessarily initiate if he was playing with Chris Paul or if he was even playing with Devin Booker. There were moments where maybe one of those guys would initiate the set. Payton would catch the ball and he would just drive, and maybe he would find somebody on a lob or find somebody on a cut or kick it back out to the perimeter for 3. And look, this is not a player who is going to have a lot of responsibility placed on his shoulders unless there are major injuries in the playoffs. But you want somebody who can, for instance, when Chris Paul gets his shoulder ripped out of its socket or has COVID, that can be your each one more, basically. The guy who you at least trust to just be out there, do damage control, and contribute to positive possessions. And we already know that Elfrid Payton can play defense, right? I mean, that's part of why he was a little bit of a standout in this game, being able to check guys like Kobe White or Zach LaVine or even Ayo Dosunmu and make sure that the bleeding didn't get too bad. All 3 of those guys shot below 50% from the field and whatnot. So all of that said, Payton was a +4 in his minutes tonight. And there's just, like I said, I mean, not to kind of give a backhanded compliment, but there just have not been a lot of moments where I think any of us came away feeling positively about those minutes. And what I meant to say about, or what I meant when I was talking about the broader thing that shows us about this Suns team is Monty Williams was exactly right about this. If you go all the way back to, the first time, I don't even remember who would have been injured the first time. It might have been Landry Shamet, might have been Devin Booker, that the first time Payton had to kind of get dusted off and join the rotation. Monty got asked about it, because we all could see right away, hey, this is not an ideal fit. And I mean, we all had questions about it before the season even started. And Monty would get asked about it, and we his answer would be the same with us every time. Elfrid is a guy who, when he's able to get rhythm from a playing time standpoint and from a role standpoint, he's comfortable, and I believe he can execute and be, a good player for us. But when he's not, and I'm speaking as Monty, when he's not able to be out there consistently, then he's liable to make mistakes and be uncomfortable and overthink things. And so I guess, the moral of the story here is Monty is right. Monty was right again. He knows this team. He has his finger on the pulse of this team, and he probably has his finger on the pulse of who actually can execute the offense he wants to run. So maybe we shouldn't necessarily have doubted that Elfrid was at least somebody who could execute, right? I mean, again, not a perfect fit, can't shoot, not somebody who you want to put out there in high leverage moments, not somebody who you want to rely on heavily, but he is at least feeling more and more to me like somebody who in an emergency moment is not going to kill you. And considering he was kind of the last player on this roster that you felt that way about, if he is now checking that box as well, there's really not a roster spot 1 through 15 right now that you worry about. So not every day we talk about Elfrid Payton in that much detail, but I think tonight it was warranted. We'll see what this roster looks like. I mean, maybe I gave Elfrid Payton his swan song there. Maybe he is packaged up in a trade and doesn't ever get his chance to continue to learn the 0.5 system. I do not know. Feels like we are in the thick of smokescreen and rumor mill and all that good stuff heading into the trade deadline. We've got specials on ESPN every day, breaking everything down. We've got Woj on, these little snippets that I'm seeing on Twitter. It is definitely that time of year. I will be here with you for all of it. We also have a fun road trip, so do not go anywhere. Sixers tomorrow night. That should be a very, very fun game as well. Thank you guys again for making Locked On Suns your first listen. Subscribe if you have not already on YouTube. And now go make Locked On Bets your second listen to get everything you need to know for this weekend's big game.